Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Whoa! Hey! Don't touch me! Hey!
Hippity hop to the talk show shop. Thanks for joining me. My name's Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy, and this week we're going to lighten things up just a touch. Last week's show was very intense, and I urge people who haven't listened to that show yet to check out my No Zimmerman special, where I talked about the Coptic Christians in Egypt. That apparently went over really big with folks. But this week, I wanted to lighten things up a bit for people, because we've got race baiters out there. We've got people who want to stir the pot, create the hate, and I want to do things a little bit different on this little show here. Before we can really begin with the fun, gonna have to address an issue that came up on Saturday. Now, I find it very fascinating that the BS of A from the Blaze, a organization that I actually support, chose the 46th anniversary of the moon landing, one of man's greatest achievements, to make fun of a fake blind person. This particular thing happened when Brian Sack, and I think after seeing this show, and particularly this episode, I think we can all guess what he's a sack of. Let's hope that's a stage name for him. Had a panel in which there was a quote-unquote blind lifeguard that supposedly drove a car and had multiple accidents, but of course that was okay. I believe her name was Sandy. And basically every stereotype that you can think of the stupid and imperceptive blind person was hit in this segment. And I just have to say, first of all, I have a problem generally with the BS of A. You know, one of the things that conservatives are trying to do is to get into pop culture, get more into pop culture, which is a good idea. The trouble is, when it comes to comedy, often conservatives wind up making something that looks awkward and forced. And that's kind of always been my impression of the BS of A. And that wasn't helped on July the 20th when they had this completely inaccurate and very demeaning portrayal of a blind person. Now, I understand that I don't have the right not to be offended. And it appears that the BS of A is exercising their right not to be funny. All right, is everybody ready for some actual fun now? Good! Now, the Science Fiction Channel, or as they've decided to call themselves now, the Sci-Fi Channel, have been doing creature features for a while. You know, in the great tradition of Sharktopus, they put out a much ballyhooed film called Sharknado. And last week they repeated it, and I happened to catch it, so I wanted to kind of give my impressions of it. This isn't really a movie review per se. I don't think that I'm ever going to really be a movie reviewer, but I think I can talk about this movie in kind of the same way as I might talk about it to a friend. Now, first of all, the thing stars or has a cast of people I've never heard of. All right, but I can give you a basic synopsis of the story. A big hurricane swoops into Los Angeles, and it just so happens that at the same time this big freak hurricane comes into Los Angeles, there's a big influx of sharks, and the hurricane spawns tornadoes, waterspouts over the ocean, and these transfer to tornadoes on land, and the sharks wind up flying through the air and landing in an already deeply flooded city of Los Angeles. And out of that, hijinks are supposed to ensue. So we have a we have a set of characters. The hero is a guy who I guess is some kind of actual beach lifeguard. I get the impression that, frankly, Sandy, the blind lifeguard on the BS of A, would have probably been a little bit more on the ball in some of these instances. But there's this guy, the hero, who's the lifeguard, and his friend, who is an Australian ex-surfer champion, and the story kind of revolves around the lifeguard. First thing that happens is the guy is all concerned about his family, who are in Beverly Hills. Now, you soon get to meet this family, and if you're anything like me, you soon begin to think, well, these people would make really good shark chum. Okay? Throughout the entire movie, while the hero is trying to figure out both how to rescue his family, rescue a school bus full of kids, and possibly try to stop the whole phenomenon of the Sharknadoes. Yes, there's more than one Sharknado. His ex-wife, who he appears to be supporting in this house in Beverly Hills, and his daughter, who lives in that house, are constantly picking and whining at the guy. You know, sharks flying through the air, sharks swimming through the streets, sharks biting people in half, and this guy's ex is a harpy. I guess some things just never change. Okay, so the guy manages to extract his extremely ungrateful ex and his bratty, whiny daughter from their Beverly Hills home. And I guess, we all probably know who's paying for that home, probably the hero of the show. Why alimony still exists in California, I don't know. I thought this was the age of equality. He rescues his family from this Beverly Hills love nest, where his ex-wife lives, by the way, with her boyfriend. Nice gig if you can get it. And they go out to some point somewhere above, I guess, Los Angeles, where the hero's son is in flight school for flying a helicopter. Now, here's where the real... this movie is filled with junk science, but this is where the real junk science begins. All right? They figure out how they're going to stop the Sharknadoes. And it's going to be by flying a helicopter close to the tornado and tossing in acetylene bombs. Yeah. Okay. Folks, one thing you never even think about doing is flying a helicopter near a tornado. Okay? Much less getting one close enough to a tornado to where you can toss anything into a tornado. That's not science fiction. That's fantasy. Completely ridiculous. Now, they actually do succeed with this crazy plan of theirs. They destroy about 2 or 3 tornadoes by tossing bombs into them from a helicopter. Then the helicopter crashes, but before the helicopter crashes, of course, this woman falls out of the helicopter. She's another love interest that frankly nobody cares about, and naturally, she falls right into the mouth of a shark, so you figure she's dead. Well, by the end of the movie, the helicopter crashes, and the hero's son, who was flying the helicopter, gets out of the helicopter and starts heading towards where his father was, because he was swallowed by a huge shark once the last of the tornadoes was destroyed. This was a huge shark. I'm asking myself at this point, is this Sharknado or Attack of the Megalodons? If you don't know what a megalodon is, look it up, because he gets completely swallowed by the shark, but he just happens to have a chainsaw going in his hands at the time. So what does he do? He saws his way out of the shark and pulls his son's girlfriend out of the shark. And I'm on Twitter, and I tweet, hey, there's a prize inside. Now, if the junk science of Sharknado, as far as getting rid of the tornadoes wasn't bad enough. The left couldn't even get their own climate change message right. Because as this movie is starting, someone comes on the radio and says, experts say that this is caused by global warming. All right, look, a little piece of advice for you guys on the left. Stay consistent with your message. Even though it's crap, stay consistent with the crap. People really believe that they understand what global warming is now, and they don't believe in global warming. Stick with the climate change shtick, because that way you can blame any kind of weather on it. So, to conclude here, what we have with Sharknado is extremely bad science fiction, junk science to base it on, characters, half of which I wanted to see eaten by the sharks. I would say if I was going to create a rating system as the unpleasant blind guy, I would have to give this thing 2 white canes out of 10 because it's fun to goof on. Okay, now we've got a little time, which is great, because I found something courtesy of CO Goddess on Twitter, and she's kind of fun. If you like fun, follow her. And it is the 10 dirtiest sports names in history. Now, this is one you may or may not want to send the kids in to grab a snack for. I'm just saying that this could be a little bit PG-13, let's say. And please forgive me if I don't do that good a job at reading these names. I'm going to do my best. And as always, I'm going to post this to UBG Contact on Twitter, and you can read the article there for yourself. Now, what I'm going to do is read the names, all right? And then I'm going to tell you who these guys work for. Okay, the first name is Decody Fagg. That's D-E apostrophe C-O-D-Y, last name F-A-G-G. Mr. Fagg works for the NFL. It doesn't say here what team he's on at the moment. Next one. All right, I'm going to be a little bit more tasteful here and just spell the poor guy's name. Next one is Gregor Fucka. And this is a guy who started for Italy in basketball for their 2000 Olympic team. Okay, next one is Albert Pujols. Now, that's the way the man's name is pronounced in Spanish. His last name is spelled P-U-J-O-L-S. And he may or may not be playing in Major League Baseball. At least he was scheduled to be a free agent for Major League Baseball in 2012. Next one, B.J. Johnson. Now, he was, as of the writing of this article, which was in March of 2011, he was a premier receiver at what looks like the University of Texas, and he signed with the Denver Broncos. Don't know how well he did after that, but that's what happened to him at that time. And the next one is figure skater Irina Slutskaya. That's L-S-L-U-T-S-K-A-Y-A. Now, while her name is most likely pronounced differently in Russian, she did win the European Championships in 1996 and 1997. And in the 1998 Nagano Olympics, she couldn't finish strong and came in 5th place. Next up is Ron Tugnut. Now, this is a guy who played for 6 different, it looks like NHL teams in 16 successful seasons. All right. Next, we have a sports legend, Dick Butkus. Dick Butkus is, of course, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Sports fans have known of this guy for a long, long time. He exemplified toughness back in the day, and certainly his name is one of maybe not one of the dirtiest names in sports, but certainly one of the more amusing ones. Although I'm not too sure I'd make fun of that name to his face even today. The next one is Dick Pole. Now, he was a pitcher for the Mariners and the Red Sox in the 1970s. And according to this article, he was recently the pitching coach for the Cincinnati Reds. Now, Known as America's winningest driver with his 1,000 feature race wins, and a man who had the second most epic name in sports history, is Dick Trickle. That's Dicktrickle. All right. Now, this next name can be pronounced one of two ways, and I'm going to just spell it and let you guys make your own judgment. Rusty Kuntz. This fella played outfield for the White Sox, Twins, and Tigers from 1979 to 1985. Now let's move on to this week's Awesome American. Now, generally, I try not to do stories that everybody else is doing. I try not to cover things that everybody else is covering. But in this case, I'm going to break the rule because I'm going to talk about a kid that a lot of people have mentioned. I got this particular story about him from the Daily Caller. He's been mentioned, I think, on Real News, maybe on the 5. Who knows? There are a lot of people that have talked about this guy, and it's well deserved, I have to say. When I do Awesome Americans, my favorites are always regular American kids, regular American young people, because the temptations out there to go bad for young people are really very strong. So when I see a kid actually doing good things, I like to talk about it and give my kudos, even if everybody else is doing the same thing. Frankly, in this case, all the positive reinforcement can only be a good thing. Now, I'm of course talking about T.M.R. Boggs, and I'm going to read the Daily Caller story on the guy. On an ordinary summer afternoon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 5-year-old Jocelyn Rojas entertained herself playing in her grandmother's front yard. With blonde hair, brown eyes, stylish glasses, and a courageous, radiant smile, Jocelyn is a picture of an adorable all-American girl. A white man in his 70s approached her. He walked with a limp. Witnesses say he wore green shoes, green pants, and a red and white striped shirt. Preying on her innocence, he persuaded Jocelyn to accompany him. He offered to buy her some ice cream, and she trusted him. And just like that, they both vanished. Jocelyn's family called the police. Authorities issued an Amber Alert signaling a serious child abduction case. Horrible, horrible thoughts flashed through my mind, said Jocelyn's grandmother. Monsters exist. In real life, they're much scarier than the imaginary horrors of science fiction. Each year, low-life scumbags abduct about 58,000 unrelated children, primarily for sexual purposes, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Nearly half of these children were sexually assaulted. Far too often, the abductors murder the children, hold them for ransom, or intend to keep them indefinitely. You see the Amber Alerts and you think, I feel for that family, said Jocelyn's grandmother. But when you're in that situation, it's horrible. The Amber Alert galvanized the community. People of all ages joined in the search for Jocelyn. T.M.R. Boggs, a 15-year-old African-American, was helping move an elderly woman's couch at a nearby apartment complex that evening when he learned of the ongoing search. He and his friend Chris Garcia hopped on their bikes about a half-mile from the apartment complex. Boggs spotted Jocelyn in a dark red car with an old white man behind the wheel. Boggs knew they had little time to prevent a young child from becoming another heartbreaking story on the evening news. He was not going to let that happen. The young man spotted Jocelyn and pursued the car for 15 minutes. Every time we would go down the street, he would turn back around and we'd go back and follow him, Boggs told WGAL. As soon as the guy started noticing that we were chasing him, he stopped at the end of the hill and let her out, Boggs recalled. She ran to me and said that she needed her mom. Boggs realizes that he might have saved Jocelyn's wife. He sees it as, quote, a blessing for me to make that happen, unquote. His proud mother remarked that Boggs is, quote, learning what I tell him to help others, unquote. This really is a great story, guys. You know, I love ending the show on a note like this. As I say, especially with the race baiting and the violence out there now being caused by a few people trying to drive their own profits with this stuff. It was definitely refreshing to hear about young Mr. Boggs. I wish him and his friend all the success in the world. And that's going to be it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate everyone. Thank you very much. And may your God go with you. Hit it.